I'm not a big fan of Marvel. That's not to say that I don't appreciate some Marvel things. I mean, I love Iron Man 1. That being said, if something has been recommended or told to be really good, then I am inclined to check it out because, well, good media is always fun. So when I saw that Civil War is recommended as a pretty good Marvel movie, I decided to give it a chance, and yeah, I have a notepad for that one as well. I'll go through it one by one. It's gonna be chronological. There's gonna be issues that are gonna come back several times because there's some smaller, funny, cute ones, and some pretty big, intense ones that we will go through right now. All of these points can be argued against. I am not an expert in Marvel issues or in Civil War in general, but I do have a few notes that I would like to mention and share and see what people think. Now, in this, I'm not going to be using the standard Zemo's plan is weird, Iron Man is wrong, Captain America's wrong, whatever the fuck reasons people use. I have different notes that I haven't seen anywhere. For the most part, some of them do overlap with some other critique points, but this is my list and I hope you get something out of it.
Body armor, AR-15s.
So, when the movie starts and the bad guys are walking in with their guns and start shooting all over the place, they're obviously shooting automatic rifles. And then Captain America's like, AR-15s. Does Captain America know what an AR-15 is? It's a semi-automatic rifle. The only way to get a fully automatic AR-15, you'd need to, well, make it not an AR-15. Modify the entire trigger mechanism, which makes it a composite gun, as far as I know.
We're going to see what the AR can take in full auto before it starts to have issues, okay? We're running a standard M16 lower. Oh, this thing is getting warm. That was, yeah. That started cooking off a little bit. One more. Why not? That was it. There's the gas tube. Done. Our bomb-proof installation, literally we did create a bomb with this thing. So the bomb-proof installation did its job.
And other than that, the way you can get a somewhat fully automatic, semi-automatic rifle is using a bump stock, which they're not using here.
I've seen a lot of information recently about bump stocks on rifles, which got me thinking, can a bump stock actually simulate a fully automatic rate of fire, and can it shoot as fast as a fully automatic rifle can? One thing I definitely wanted to point out is with a fully automatic rifle, you're going to have a lot more accuracy because you actually have the butt of the gun up against your shoulder, and you don't have to worry about all the different parts. With the bump stock, you have the trigger, you have the gun sliding in and out of the stock. It's a lot more difficult to make sure that everything is in the right setting and the right situation for it to fire like that.
So I don't know what that fuck up was. I think it's safe to assume that Hollywood doesn't know much about guns. Thing is, I don't know much about guns either, but I knew AR-15s were semi-automatic, so that was embarrassing. Regardless, we can move on. So the first thing I found while watching this movie was actually like how much is it? Like 4 frames of an error, an editing mistake. It's technically a continuity error, but it's not something that's movie breaking. The guy at 8 minutes pulls out a pistol, and then literally maybe 4 or 5 frames later, most likely 4 to 5 frames later, you see him holding a rifle, which is pretty funny.
I don't work like that no more.
Alright, so here we have something that is potentially movie breaking. We're not gonna reveal that yet. We're gonna tell you soon, eventually. I don't know. I don't work like that no more. That's a very important line. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us that this guy is resistant to electrocution, I guess. Tasing. Let's think through this thing. Assume you're a criminal and you have funds to enhance yourself in some way. When you say I don't work like that no more, it doesn't mean I have things on me that prevent me from getting tased. It means I am now changed in a way that causes me not to have or not to feel negative effects due to tasing or any other form of damage that you might use this skill for, whatever. So if you, as a villain, had the opportunity to enhance some physical ability, then you probably go with super strength or super soldier stuff, super durability, super healing, whatever the fuck. Things like Captain America has. So the way I'm assuming it, considering this for the fight between him and Captain America, is it's not evenly matched because he's not a perfect copy, but he is stronger than the average person. He's faster than the average person. He's just a super soldier that's less super than Captain America or Bucky. So what does that tell us? He has gotten a super soldier type of adjustment to his physiology in order to be a better criminal, and that has given him, first of all, probably the likelihood or the ability to survive the building crashing on top of him, but secondly, the ability to survive being tased. So that's very important because tasing will have a pretty big effect later. But as far as I'm concerned, if an inferior super soldier is capable of taking a taser to the face and have no effects, then I'm gonna have to assume that no super soldier can be affected by tasing. I don't know if this contradicts previous lore, but we're talking about this movie, so let's see what happens. Oof. Well, if you can't write Arabic, don't write it. That's the only thing I can say. God, this is embarrassing. I don't understand how you can fuck this up this bad. You can look up how it's written in Arabic. You can also ask any designer, not even that, any Arab person with a computer, not even that, any American who knows how to speak or write Arabic. And not even that, you can just Google the logo or the text in Arabic and get it placed on it as an SVG or an EPS or a PNG or whatever the fuck you want. What is this? This is embarrassing. Jesus Christ. I guess the only real problem I have with this is that it's dead center, right behind the main character in this shot's face. It's just so distracting. So I'm gonna give you all a tidbit. Every single Arabic written anything, the letters themselves, they are always cursive. Arabic is not detached. It will never be detached. Arabic also doesn't have capital letters, which means you don't have starting letters that are detached. You have ending letters that are detached. The ending letters is what is used here. All of those are ending letters. And even better, you have not written the United Nations. I will show you actually what you wrote if it were in English. So, yeah. So here what I'm wondering is, how did Zemo know where the box was that he was looking for? The likelihood that the guy would have told him is extremely not likely. There isn't holes in every single wall, so... I'd assume that if he wanted to believe that he searched the entire house for it because he had to, you wouldn't have to show the whole thing. I would believe it. You can just show, just like they did in... what was the movie? Camino? Grand Camino? El Camino? Whatever that movie was called. The Breaking Bad sequel movie, think, of Jesse. Just show us a shot like Jesse, after Jesse searched for the money. That would be a lot more interesting. It would show us the ruthlessness and the desperation on Zemo as a character to find the thing. I don't know. Whatever. Moving on. Dude's mouth and nose are on top of the water. I know they did that because it was likely practical and they didn't want to have an accident on their hands, but there's an easy way to fix this. It's called CGI, and you have the budget for it. Or maybe you didn't. Regardless, here's the even better way to fix this. Don't show his face going underwater. Just show his head and the water rising up, Hail Hydra, and then cut away, and then the choking noises. Done. Easy fix. You don't have to make me look at it and think, oh, okay, he's fine, and Zemo fucked up his torture method. So, here's another pretty big issue from what I understand. Zemo takes the place of the therapist. The therapist that was booked in order to interrogate Barnes. Barnes has not been caught yet. So why would Barnes have a booked therapist even though Barnes is not caught yet? Why would the therapist be in a hotel room? You could very easily fix this. Just switch scenes around. So, I want you guys to put yourself in the place of the, Berlin officers, whatever the hell, that are gonna be questioning and detaining Bucky Barnes. So, you have access to Tony Stark. Tony Stark is now under the UN's control. I don't know if it officially is, but by word, it definitely is. And if eventually it'll become officially the case. So, with that in mind, I have a question. Why wouldn't you get Tony Stark to disassemble, detach, or defunction Bucky's arm? Why wouldn't you get Tony Stark to completely break it off? Because he can later on. Now, obviously, I will assume that maybe Tony didn't know he could, but it would be safe to assume that Tony would have tried something. Because, well, we know what happens after the interrogation scene. And, that's the point. The point is that if you could get someone to remove the arm, the weapon that is taped to the guy's body, then you would have a lot better chances of dealing with him. Now, there's other options as well. Assuming that you can't remove the arm for whatever Dumbledore magic he's using, there's one of two things. First of all, regional anesthesia. Regional anesthesia will give you numbness in the area, but also put that body part to sleep. You give regional anesthesia to the person's arm, and then you give so the nerves that are attached to the arm, and then you give him epidural in order to stop him from being able to move around, and just sit him down and let him stay there until the interrogation is over. He can talk to you. People with anesthesia can still talk to you, as long as it's not general anesthesia, obviously. And he's just stuck down there. We can assume that having higher doses of anesthesia on Bucky, he would be fine because he's made of super soldier stuffs. But still, that would be the first plan of action. Make the weapon that is the person that you're talking to or questioning less lethal, by making him unable to do stuff that he would normally be able to do. What are you trying to achieve with attaching him to some crappy little glass thing? It looks flimsy to me. It might be just the way I see it. And also, it's proven that Bucky can break through it if he wanted to. We can assume that they didn't know. But honestly, why would they assume that he wouldn't be able to leave something if he wanted to? He's the famed Winter Soldier. He's really dangerous. So you would just take precautionary moves in order to make sure that he can't do shit. So, anesthesia. Use anesthesia. Or get Tony Stark to rip the arm off, or get Tony Stark to figure out how the arm is attached and detach it. Maybe there's a few button combinations. It didn't grow on him. It is attached to him. There's some latch or lock that is futuristic that he could figure out. Anyway, that's just the way I see it. I think he would have been detained, neutralized functionally, and then questioned, and then detained again, and then I don't know how they would keep him under wraps. Maybe they just execute him because it's easier that way. Regardless, they did not do the right move here. I don't believe that they wouldn't do the right move. I know they would do the right move because they're not idiots.
Not getting that shield back, am I?
Technically, it's the government's property. Wings too.
That's cold.
Alright, here's another thing. The weapons are placed in lockup. So I did a bit of light research to figure out how military organizations deal with their weapons. Apparently, they do not track weapons because the most effective way, I guess, in the real world is to use RFID tags. But the problem with RFID tags is, first of all, they're limited in range. But second of all, they can be detected by anybody with an RFID receiver or whatever, because it is a radio frequency ID, you know what I mean? Now, thankfully, we don't need to assume this is the real world. We have Tony Stark. He invented infinite energy, which means there's a lot more technology advancement there than we know of. So, Now that we have all that, we need to understand what this government would act like if they had the weapons in lockup. I wager that they would commission Tony Stark to install a bunch of trackers into the weapons in order to make sure that if anything gets tampered with them, they'd be found. Because we're not dealing with humans. We're dealing with enhanced individuals. We're dealing with gods, basically. So if, let's say, worst case scenario, not even just Steve or whatever, some villain knows that the weapons are there and is like, I don't want to take the weapons for whatever reason. And they go in, break in, take the weapons and leave. You would be able to track them down because you'd have a tracker that is made by Tony Stark, which would be hidden and not obvious to anybody who doesn't know what they're looking for. And that's how that would work. So that's basically what they would do. And I guess you could say, you could start questioning, for example, well, how much time would it take to create this tracker? And I don't know. I can't say for sure. I don't know if Tony Stark is capable of doing that really quickly. But I would assume he would double time it, considering how pro Accords he is. Here's another thing. I refuse to accept that the Accords do not include trackers placed on the individuals that are the Avengers that accepted the Accords. I genuinely do. I think that they would have subdermal trackers, similar to the ones in Suicide Squad, although those weren't trackers. But yeah.
Discombobulate.
Either that or maybe an item of clothing that they would wear that would have a tracker in it, like a belt or a watch or whatever accessory you want, a ring. So the fact that Tony Stark isn't being tracked, or at least has had their vehicles tracked or their clothing items tracked or bugged or anything of that sort, really makes me wonder. And you could argue that it's against human rights, which is understandable. But here's the thing. We're not dealing with regular people. We're dealing with enhanced individuals, which means that, or at least not necessarily just enhanced individuals, individuals with weapons and free range to use those weapons. So if you're going to allow Tony Stark to suit up whenever he wants, you're going to have to at least make some sort of a rule that states that we need to know where you are at all times. Maybe some sort of trigger mechanism that if the suit is activated, we know where you are. Because Tony Stark could just as easily hide himself away from radar, go do whatever he needs to do, and then come back. Maybe that's his plan the whole time. I don't know. Point is, I'd imagine a government who knows that the world of heroes is so advanced, understands that those heroes cannot be controlled through just a slap on the wrist, would need to instill some desperate measures, which includes trackers. It includes maybe hiding away the weapons and making sure those weapons are accounted for and also tracked. I don't know. I feel like trackers would be the number one thing on everybody's mind. If they didn't do them, then I'm gonna have to assume that the governments are stupid. So, is that fair? I don't know. I think they would have been tracked. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, we have proof that Spider-Man's suit was made so fast.
You're in dire need of an upgrade. Systemic, top to bottom. 100-point restoration, that's why I'm here.
Means that Tony could have created a tracker in less than a day, in less than an hour, in 5 minutes. Yeah. It's funny how problems that no one thinks about end up being proven as problems because of other elements that no one thinks would affect the original problem that they didn't know existed. I love writing. So, I might be wrong, because it's a pretty big point, but I do not believe that Zemo, or the therapist, would be allowed to be in the room alone with Bucky without any supervision. I am 100% sure they would have guards inside to neutralize a target that is not completely sedated, not completely neutralized. Neutralize the target, it's not completely neutralized. You know what I mean? Neutralized in a threat way, not neutralized in a death living way, whatever. So that's what they would do. They would have guards inside, guns ready, locked and loaded, aimed at his head, for every suspicious motion he might commit because he's a Winter Soldier, he's a super soldier, and he has an arm made out of vibranium. And you can't take it off. Assuming that you're so in a rush to do this thing, you would not allow the therapist to be inside alone. Well, here's the thing. Even if you assume that the room was so well locked up, there was no way he could get out of it. What about the therapist? The therapist could very easily be killed by Bucky. That's a life on your hands. So that's a failure of the entire government division of this area to protect a person from a dangerous criminal that you have no idea the range or abilities of. So that's a terrible oversight, but it gives us a payoff, which makes it worse. So this is, I think, a plot hole. I might be wrong. Please tell me if I am. Alright, so now we have a problem. Vision is in the battlefield. When Vision is in the battlefield, any war, any fight, anything is now lost. He wins. All the time. There's no way he could lose. So let's see why he lost.
There he is!
So, am I supposed to assume that Vision's plan to stop them from getting to the Quinjet, because he knows where they're going, is to block the path? You know that it's Captain America and Bucky. They're both super soldiers. One of them has an arm made out of adamantium. Is it adamantium? It's vibranium. It's made out of fantasy metal. Oh, my dog wants to play. Yeah, so, fantasy metal. He can break through it with a punch. A few punches, if he's that desperate. If you were gonna... Is that a final solution? If you're gonna do that, and then piss off, I could understand. But obviously you'd see them, if it worked, you'd see them punching through the thing. And then you would have to go back down there and stop them. So what's the permanent solution from where you're standing with your laser eyes, or laser eye? Easy. Destroy the Quinjet with your Dumbledore level of laserness. It's really easy to do that, and he doesn't do it because we need a fucking resolution to this fight. So Vision would destroy the Quinjet for sure. Secondly, why is the Quinjet not tracked? Are Quinjets not the Avengers vehicles? How many Quinjets are there actually? Okay, this is a lore issue. I'm not sure if Quinjets are just standard transportation that rich people have, or if they're stereotypically Avenger vehicles. Because if they're Avenger vehicles, then... Well, they have to be, because the Quinjet's there. That's what the Avengers came on. That's where they parked it. So they're trying to get to the Quinjet that the Avengers came on in the first place. The Avengers that signed the Accords. Okay, so the Quinjet is tracked then, right? Well, no, it's not. So, well, I am confused. Yeah, this movie has a lot of problems when it comes to trying to achieve story beats, and there's gonna be a pretty big one now. So, T'Challa, or T'Chaka, Black Panther, gets tased and stops in his tracks from the pain, the sheer pain. What the hell? I thought that it wasn't affecting super soldiers. Why would it not affect the guy in the beginning?
I don't work like that no more.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just a problem that I can't resolve. I don't think they want to anyways, whatever. So, the movie tries to, I don't know, explain it by having Rhodey falling at a certain angle and a certain distance away from Tony, which makes Tony have to fly all the way back and then down. I highly doubt that a piece of human-shaped metal would fall faster than Tony would be able to fly vertically or anywhere, because the thrusters that he has are very, very powerful. Free fall in humans, the way he's falling, it's not going to be consistently fast. It's going to I think if you want to look like at a curve of velocity over time, it would vary. It wouldn't be a straight speed. And the way Tony's flying, he has aerodynamic efficiency a lot more than Rhodey, and also he has thrusters. And at the same time, we have Falcon. Now, I'm gonna assume that Falcon's tech is not as good as Tony's tech, because Tony's tech is god level. But regardless, Tony would have reached him. He would have grabbed him. He would have reached him 4 times over. Actually, he could have sipped a coffee and then went down and catched him. But I'm gonna let the movie have that contingency, even though it doesn't make sense. You could have made it a bit more convincing by having, let's say, for example, Tony's focused on the Quinjet, flying behind it, and then Rhodey gets hit, but he assumes that it's Falcon, and so Rhodey keeps falling, and then eventually maybe Falcon screams, or actually they're not on the same comms. Assuming that Falcon hacks the comms, and then contacts one's like, Tony, there's this guy that's falling. And then Tony realizes, turns around, and gets really close, but then Rhodey lands anyways. I guess that's a very minor fix. Regardless, I'm gonna give the movie that because it doesn't change too much. Mostly because after this movie, Rhodey can walk fine with robot stuff. So whatever. That's fine. Actually, hang on. Why doesn't T'Challa take Rhodey to what's his face, to Wakanda? I guess you can't blame Civil War for that because Black Panther came after Civil War, right? And Black Panther can stabilize spinal injuries. Whoops. Well, regardless, that's the MCU's problem for being inconsistent, but that's not something new anymore. So let's ignore that. Let's just assume that this is fine, even though it's not. Why doesn't Vision go to grab the Quinjet? I'll let you answer that. I don't know how to answer that.
Oh, I just knocked the A out of their AV. We got about 30 seconds before they realize it's not their equipment. Just look. Because that is the fellow who's supposed to interrogate Barnes.
So, Sam would not believe Tony here. Sam would look at Tony and see that and assume that Tony is lying. Because, well, he just showed him an image of a random dead guy. What is he supposed to know from that? Right? It's just, oh, there's a dead body. Look, I was wrong. Now tell me where Captain America is. I just knocked the A out of their AV. You can trust me. Don't worry about it. He would not believe him. No way. Sam, first of all, they don't know each other very well. Second of all, they were fighting 5 minutes ago. Their relationship is, Tony's a bit of a cunt to him, and Tony shot him with a laser thing, even though Sam was not a threat. So Sam would not trust Tony. Sam would assume that Tony's trying to put the wool over his eyes. The thing about the trackers is Captain America never thinks to check if there's a tracker in the Quinjet. Tony leaves the helicopter, which makes me think that the government has some way of tracking the helicopter, or maybe the Secretary General had a tracker installed in the helicopter when he was parked in the raft. That makes sense to me. That's intelligent right there. It's like, yeah, like Tony won't be taking the helicopter anywhere. Let's just take the helicopter home and let them assume I went home while I escape through the bottom. That makes a lot of sense. Why does this movie pretend that there's no trackers a lot of times? I don't know. I guess trackers would be the bane of this fucking movie.
Surprise, motherfucker. Bullshit, not good.
So, Tony went from pretty much the bottom to the top in a few seconds. Earlier, he could barely get up anything with any level of dexterity or speed, and he'd had to pause several times. Bucky was literally on the top. Tony was maybe a third on the bottom, maybe even lower. So getting up that distance that fast makes no sense. Bucky would have been ready. Actually, Bucky would have had a plan by then. So, whatever. Moving on. So, question. What is Iron Man's goal here? I'm assuming it's to kill Bucky, right? So, Cap is on the floor, barely able to move. Iron Man decides to monologue for one line, and then, I don't know, Cap is barely getting up. So, in that moment, while Iron Man is close to Bucky, Bucky's on the floor defenseless. Why doesn't Iron Man just blow his face off with whatever weapons he has? Or step on his head and crush it? I mean, I don't get it. What is his goal? Is it just to posture, or does he want to kill Bucky? Because he doesn't try to kill Bucky. He just beats the shit out of him and then let him writhe on the floor, even though there's no one in his way when he can kill both of them. I'm assuming he doesn't want to kill Cap because that's not a good look or a good move. But Bucky is the criminal and he wants to kill him because he killed his mom, so why doesn't he kill him? Well, that's about it. Those are my quote-unquote objective critiques of Civil War. I think it doesn't stand up on its own when it comes to the causality, and that really hurts the movie's quality. Obviously, I'm open to being challenged because I'm not a Marvel aficionado. I just watched this one movie and I have very loose knowledge on the other ones. So I'm just putting this out there because I'm not sure how many people have mentioned all the things I've mentioned, because I haven't heard any real critiques of Civil War other than Zemo's plan is wrong. Tony Stark is wrong. It's like, no, they're not wrong, and Zemo's plan isn't bad. Honestly, the character work in this movie is on point. If anything, the character work is what is bolstering this movie up. The characters make sense. They're understandable in their goals and what drives them. The reaction in the world is pretty realistic. The goals, like having the UN wanting to control those all-powerful beings, makes sense. All these things make sense, and where they come from, the Age of Ultron movie, they work. They really do work. So that's one thing that this movie has going for it. Causality, though, that's where it starts getting hindered. And to me, although character work is pretty important, causality kind of really ruins movies for me when things just don't make sense, but they just happen. Or things that are errors that they didn't realize were errors hinder the movie's overall quality. I have a problem with that stuff. Regardless, that's my critique, I guess. It's not much of a critique. It's more like a haphazard recording. And, well, if you have any rebuttals, please let me know. I'd love to talk to anyone who knows this shit more than me, because I want to say there's at least one good Marvel movie other than Iron Man 1, which has a terrible ending. So, yeah. Well, regardless, Marvel's down the shitter now, so nobody cares about Marvel anymore. Well, yeah. Bye.